All right, there we go. So, hello, everybody. My name is Nathalie Brochstein, and I've been called a humanistic visionary. And you may be wondering, oh boy, how does that work for her in the workplace? Well, I realize I have a skill, and it's an uncanny ability to spot elephants in the room. While many folks may skitter around an elephant, be scared and try not to upset them, or pretend they're not blocking them from being able to get the work done, I'm the one who's going to stop a meeting, look around, and state, hey, folks, I can't seem to focus on the agenda because of this big elephant blocking my view. Can we please take a moment to escort this poor fellow out of the conference room? So now you get a sense for my internal experience in the workplace. I'm noticing the controversy and continuously determining if what I observe is an elephant or maybe just a little mouse. So let's take a look at a couple elephants I've discovered in organizations. So as a software engineer, during the dot-com boom in the Silicon Valley, we started to understand the impact of teaming or lack thereof. An entire Agile movement was born from looking at an elephant straight in the eye. The elephant was all about working sequentially. You could not start developing until all the requirements were complete. And as a software engineer, we might ask for many different types of requirements. I got to admit that I spoke elephant back in those days, telling a business analyst that I could not start coding until all the detailed specifications were written down. Epiphany moment. Instead of hiding behind the walls of I need this before I can start this, we learned how to break items down into smaller pieces and collaborate daily. Work got faster. We delivered more value and increased revenue by escorting that elephant out of the room and working together. And there we go. And so the first elephant, what's working sequentially is about avoiding work. Let's move on to the next elephant. The next elephant I spotted was when I joined leadership teams. Collaboration, transparency, and trust often fell to the sidelines as each leader focused on their separate objectives, metrics, and departments. Even worse, I noticed competing leaders, each one fighting for the top attention of the executive in the room. Sometimes her comments were a little nice, such as an edgy remark meant to put down another leader. Other times we had elephants storm blatantly into conference rooms, cutting off other leaders, withholding information, and even dropping critical subject matter experts off an invite. I spent the last decade fascinated with this elephant, when and how it appears, what the impact is on the business, along with what can be done to escort that elephant out of the room. In essence, trying to understand what is the effect of siloed leadership mentality. A key finding from studying this elephant is that siloed mentality decreases resilience in organizations. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. But first, let's talk about the tracks these elephants leave behind. All right. So some of you may be following one of the many variations of @overheard on Instagram. That's one of my favorite accounts. They continuously post these funny conversations overheard in different cities. So I'll give you an example. So @overheard LA, there was a post. Everything's changed so much in LA. I don't even know who to pretend to be anymore. I did a little research, and there's one that's called @overheard London. And here a quote was, I'm 50% wondering if it's too late to drink coffee and 50% wondering if it's too early to drink wine. And then there's one @overheard Manchester, where someone overheard someone saying a shrimp is just a small lobster with scoliosis. So with that, you get the concept. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through my version, which I call @overheard organization. So now this organization may seem familiar to you, It's a fictitious organization that is nowhere, but perhaps everywhere. A reminder, we're on a mission to spot elephant tracks that came through the organization. Tracks should be easy to identify as they show the results of a siloed leadership mentality. Take a moment to think if this could come from your organization. Ready? Let's go searching. All right. As we walk through the organization, we see two leaders, and one is saying to the other, these are my technical resources, and I would rather they work on projects that make them miserable than work that is not part of my department. What's happening here? This is a good example of leadership not being a team sport. Agile was founded based on teamwork, yet leadership in most organizations is still very siloed. Few organizations genuinely embrace teaming at the leadership level. If I'm competing against you to be the top performer or to get the attention of the leader above me, then I have no desire to embrace true teaming values such as collaboration, courage, and compassion. Let's continue on. The next example. We will know that our transformation is successful when we are all following SAFE. All areas need to understand and embrace the change to transform an organization. An agile transformation whose goal is to follow SAFE has lost the concept of the problem they're solving for. They have not clearly articulated what for their business they need more agility for, the benefits and the why behind it. Hence, they're using SAFE as if that were the actual problem. It's only the actual problem if you're working for SAFE. All right, let's keep going. Let's see what else we see in the organization. Well, one of the Agile values is transparency. So we need to create a more transparent culture. Make sure to copy me on all your emails. What is going on here? Here we've got a leader who's using Agile as a weapon to increase micromanagement. And so again, these are elephant tracks as opposed to encouraging teaming. This leader is diving into the details and creating an environment that feels threatening and uncomfortable with a lack of psychological safety for the people on their team. What else do we have? Got a leader that says use whatever method you need as long as you deliver on time. Uh-oh, what's happening here? What we see here, if we look close enough, are elephant tracks. A silo mentality means changes to how we work that go beyond one department. That means that you have, as a leader, what's important to you is to help guide the transition to new ways of working and not to expect folks to deliver within a specific timeline, completely disregarding the concept of agile and incremental delivery. So let's keep going and see what other types of tracks we can see in here. Isn't Agile something software people do? I don't know. That seems to be something that happens very familiar when you talk to someone in the business, that they think that Agile is this thing that software people do. Really, it doesn't have anything to do with us. You know, it's true that Agile was a bottom-up movement started by software developers. Agile aimed to uncover better ways of developing software, and it did. We discovered that for an organization to be Agile, we must move past just the technical delivery teams. An Agile or adaptable organization needs to state agility as a value and use this to guide decision-making process. This includes areas such as strategic decision-making, visualizing the portfolio, prioritization, resource allocation, performance management, working with vendors. The list goes on, but still many organizations, they're hitting a glass ceiling. There is a massive opportunity for organizations to apply the lessons we learned that worked for teaming at the technical delivery level to all areas of the organization. Here we go again. We are in a state of chaos, one leader says. Our agile coaches rolled off and people rolled back to old habits. Now we have a hodgepodge. People don't know what to follow or how to deliver. And in many cases, it's a lot worse than when they started off. So this quote goes with the one from previous, and it's all too familiar. Instead of the leadership team collaborating to evaluate and implement changes to ways of working throughout the organization, they bring in coaches to train and provide guidance without ever buying into leading the change. To sustain the change, you must realize the tendency to fall back to the familiarity. Take a moment to consider how this may look different if leadership collaborated to understand and implement these changes. A statement I frequently say is change is constant. It cannot be outsourced. It needs to become embedded. And let's look at one more elephant track. Are we there yet? We spent all this money on this agile transformation. And so leaders are asking, what does an organization look like when the transformation is complete? Too often organizations think becoming agile needs to be added on top of what they're already doing, when it's more about unlocking the potential that already exists. Agile is not a fixed state. The companies that will not only survive in the digital era, but thrive are those that view Agile as a way of being. Not only do they stop fighting change, but they go out and find it so it can be used as a strategic advantage. You know, successful organizations, they're shapeshifters. They go beyond Agile practices. Ideas for organizational changes are continuously solicited, prioritized, and implemented. We learn from this quote that many organizations are still managing transformations like a project with fixed time, budget, and scope. So with that, I want to do a quick poll. Let's do a quick poll. And I want to see what happens around you. Which elephant tracks might be found in your organization or in the organization to you. So if you don't mind, let's start off this poll and see what have you observed? Are any of these, have you seen evidence of any of these elephant tracks in your organization? Oh boy. Yep. Look at that. Let's see. Lack of a clearly articulated business problem and siloed leadership. Oh, actually, lack of articulated business problem is the top. Interesting. I see this again and again. Siloed leadership, 70%, micromanaging, absence of leadership. Yep. Yeah, this is really interesting. And just take one more second to let folks take a look at this poll, and we might even want to post it in the meetup so people see, because so what we're seeing is this is a universal, this is happening in more than just the companies that I've been working with, right? We have these tendencies for leadership to be siloed in many different areas and in many parts of the world. So thank you for answering this poll, and it gives us some reference to what is the impact. So with that, let me I'm going to jump to the next section, and we're going to talk a little bit about why this is happening. What's going on here? So why is this even the situation? So if we think about our new ways of working, I'm going to do a bit of a background to understand where this predicament came from. So to understand why there's so many elephants in the organizations today, let's remind ourselves of the evolution of organizations. So the 20th century industry was primarily focused on production of physical products. To work on assembly line, each person is only responsible for their part. The work is relatively predictable and does not require much collaboration. Today, most redundant tasks are accomplished by machines. Machines and automation work great for a predictable set of actions. If I need to test the same website functionality again and again, let's automate it. Humans are required for more disruptive, innovative, and complex work. The term VUCA, which is used many times now, is an acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. These qualities make a situation or condition challenging to analyze, respond to, or plan for. You can't really automate for VUCA. Solving VUCA-level problems require developing the ability to ideate. I like to think of ideation in 3 primary stages. The first is converge. You got to get clear on the problem. Set the container of what are the areas that we want to ideate on. Clarify the guardrails for the problem we're trying to solve. Then you diverge. You brainstorm. You look for lots of different creative solutions, generating as many ideas as possible. Then you're going to converge again, and you're going to select the best solution for the problem. Okay, so to recap, in organizations, more and more people are doing fewer redundant tasks, are available to solve complex VUCA-level problems. Solving complex problems requires learning a whole new set of skills. These skills include looking for opportunities, sharing insights, and solving problems together. Over the last century, in many cases, behaviors that support ideation and collaboration have been suppressed. For example, bureaucratic, rule-based systems, they follow a strict hierarchy. They're built on a sense of stability, formal roles, responsibilities, and expectations, along with an obvious set of processes and regulations. Imagine for a moment the experience of working in a highly bureaucratic system, such as a government agency. So I'm going to pick on the Department of Motor Vehicles in California, all right? Here, it's known like that the archetype here is the sloth. It's known for being very slow. This is not a place that's going to be very innovative and open for change. It's not a very agile organization. And it's easy to see how adapting to a fast, changing pace goes against the natural grain of the system. They are notorious for being slow, since everything has to go through a change of command. A classic quote that you can hear is, "Let me speak to my supervisor about that," for anything that that doesn't go through the regular path. Or if you ask for something that's not on the list, you'll have to speak to someone from another department. These types of systems with a strong hierarchy are maintained in a way that stifles creativity, innovation, and free thinking. The capability of following rules and procedures outweighs that of fostering collaboration or relationship building. And this can make it challenging to respond to change. Typically, speaking up is discouraged in these systems. In this system, the team shuts down and simply goes into agreement mode, following the rules, procedures, or the most outspoken or high-ranking leader suggestions. Individuality and diverse thinking is suppressed. So in the last century, most organizations rewarded an individual's performance against a preset metrics. Rewarding the individual tends to nurture a competitive mindset within the organization. There is no real incentive to share and build on each other's contribution. In this system, if we ask people to collaborate, we ask them to do one thing and pay them to do something else. Collaboration is a behavior that can be against their best interest. Without collective accountability, many organizations develop a culture driven by delivering individual outputs. Individuals focus on what they are rewarded for without sight into the effect for the entire organization's purpose and the bottom line. So let me give you some examples. Have you heard of individuals being rewarded for lines of code they wrote, how many features they completed, documents approved, individuals trained? The list goes on, and without understanding the impact of these outputs on moving the organization towards its purpose, we are reinforcing a siloed mentality. Each individual or department is only concerned with its responsibilities. Oh, here we go. So I did some research here on the cost of a siloed mentality. And so I'm going to, just in case the slide is tiny for you all, I'm going to read some of the numbers here. 40% of companies say that different departments have their own customer experience agenda. Fortune 500 companies lose an estimated $31.5 billion per year by failing to share knowledge. And high-performing organizations are 5.5 more likely than others to encourage collaboration. So just think about that. It's huge, the impact of this siloed mentality. So on our mission to spot elephant tracks that came through the organization, we identified some of the results of that siloed mentality. These are some of these statistics, and you can, I have a page that I can send to the group that looks at the statistics that are just phenomenal of what is being lost by thinking individually as opposed to understanding the impact to the bottom line. The definition, I'm going to give you first the definition of what we mean by siloed mentality, because sometimes that term doesn't resonate. So silos are the barriers that exist between departments within an organization. An extremely siloed organization can cause people in the same organization to compete and work against one another. These artificial walls promote putting aside the entire organization's goals, or at least putting them at a lower priority than those of your department. Breakdowns in communication and cooperation between participants become common, as well as an increased costs due to redundant efforts. And there's organizations I've worked with who have many different departments, and some departments are working on the same projects, and they're competing against each other and who can deliver the same thing. What a waste. The result is the organization falls short of making its best contribution. Now, I want to clarify that a siloed existence, it's not binary. I find it helpful to think of silos existing in degrees along a continuum. Most organizations will have some silo characteristics at any given time, but silos become problematic when developed to a point where performance suffers. With opportunities to work together as a common goal, leaders have the opportunities to build trust. Without building trust, leaders will fear expressing differences and opt to work by themselves. This helps us understand why leaders motivate their team members to accomplish their department-specific goals over those of the entire organization. Research shows that leaders who model collaborative behaviors are more likely to have teams that also collaborate. So as I was looking through and gathering the statistics, I saw a survey on leadership challenges by the American Management Association. And what they said is getting people with different agendas to work together is amongst the biggest obstacle facing business today. The report also mentioned that silos create an environment in which the personal and department interest of an ambitious managers take precedence over the well-being of the organization. Now, this is especially true concerning innovation, creativity, and efficiency opportunities. Now that we understand what silos are and the costly organizations, let's look at the flip side: collaboration, teaming, and resilience. Okay, resilience. What is resilience? Resilience is anticipating and, if necessary, handling and recovering from disruptive challenges. From this definition, it's easy to understand how becoming resilient is a strategic capability, especially when we think about existing in this concept of a VUCA world. By building your organization's capability for resilience, your organization can thrive no matter what comes at you. A resilient organization can still achieve its corporate objectives in the face of adversity. This means not only reducing the size and frequency of a crisis, but also improving the ability and speed to manage crisis effectively. Organizations must recognize and evolve in response to the situation to manage crisis and seek new opportunities effectively. Resilience starts with pre-event situational awareness, continues through event management, and into post-event recovery. Situational awareness is about sensing the environment, knowing what's happening inside and outside an organization, how it could impact operations, including threats, opportunities, and socioeconomic trends. The capability of leaders to gather data for situational awareness, collectively analyze the information, is a leading indicator of organizational resilience. So to recap, resilience isn't just about getting through a crisis. A genuinely resilient organization has two other essential capabilities. One, the situational awareness to prevent potential crisis from emerging, and the ability to turn a crisis into a strategic opportunity. Okay, so what we have learned, it becomes clear that siloed leadership is not resilient. Research also reveals a strong correlation between organizational resilience and a collaborative leadership style. So what can we do about this? So qualities such as a good communication and relationships across an organization are fundamental to enabling different parts of the organization to work together to achieve a common objective. I've put a slide over here, and this is I'm showing a little patriotism for our Golden Gate Warriors playing basketball. We've got Curry here, but think about these players. Even if each player is one of the best players in the world, if they don't practice together, they're not going to win a championship. And so if we think about a leadership team for an organization, the same way we think about a leadership team, a team from a sports, if you're not practicing collaboration, to pass the ball to each other, to dribble together, to do all of these different exercises, if you're not tuning those muscles of collaboration, you're not going to win the game, even if each leader separately has excellent leadership skills. And so the challenge that I'm putting forward for us to think about is collaboration isn't something that just happens by itself. It's a muscle that needs to be tuned and worked out with and strengthened. And so if a crisis comes in and the leaders have never practiced collaborating, they're not going to know how to deal with it. And we saw, for an example, what happened with COVID and the pandemic and all the other crises that have come through. The organizations where the team, one person senses what's going on, another person, they bring it into the team, they feel safe to bring it to the team, they work together on a solution, and they react based off of that. Those organizations are going to be very resilient. Their muscles have been tuned. Those where every leader has its own goals, they're all working on their own thing, they have their own outputs that they're focused on. Something comes in, well, I don't want to deal with that because that's not part of my goal. That's their goal, right? And the ball drops and they're not able to win their championship or succeed. So let's take a look at that, what it means to develop those collaboration muscles. So when I'm talking about collaboration muscles, I'm going to give some example of what are these muscles that need to be built by leadership teams. Rapid decision-making. Getting into a habit. So if anybody has sat with a senior executive team and been in a meeting where each person reports only on the status of their department, and then the meeting is done, then you've got an example of siloed leadership. Each person just wants their department, they're reporting out to probably the highest executive. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. Any blockers? No, let's go back. As opposed to using this as an opportunity to collaborate and work together and problem solve as a team. Now, if you think about the Agile teams, the technical delivery teams that we've spent the past 20 years helping those teams with Agile ways of working, look at the problems in their backlog, solve them together, and work on those teamings, that storming together. So what I'm talking about here is raising that to leadership teams so that they'll use those same skill sets. So rapid decision-making, alignment, creative problem solving, inspirational system thinking, self-awareness, all of these skill sets that their teams of technical delivery have been working with in this concept of teaming need to apply also on the leadership level. And so with that challenge in mind, I started thinking, and as an Agile coach, working in many organizations for the past couple decades, started thinking we need a product that helps leadership teams work on this collaboration. So if we think about soap as a product to promote cleanliness, I developed a product that helps leadership collaboration. And I'm calling that the LC5. So with that, let me go to the next slide and give you some background about this product. All right, so the LC5. Now I'm going back into my head, and as many of you are Agile coaches or work in Agile organizations, I kept thinking when I'm coaching Agile ways of working, there's something that's missing when I'm learning to scale Agile practices. Like we saw beforehand, if we start from the bottom and go up, we're missing something. I mean, organizations have existed for a long time, and Agile ways of working, it's, the past 20 years from engineering, we started thinking, let's do something that's more based on teaming. So I went back to school a little bit before the pandemic, and I studied organizational analysis at Stanford University. And I started thinking to myself, if we want to transform an organization, we need to start by learning what are the components of an organization. And so during my studies, I realized that there are universal components for every organization. And that's where I came up with the concept of the LC5. The LC5 is a simple model that can be easily understood by technical business anyone. And it has 5 common perspectives. And so by synthesizing the material that I learned at Stanford, I realized that we can really take any organization and we can look at it through 5 different lenses: targets, customers, participants, culture, and technology. This was the original LC5 that I came up with. And what I did with this is that I took that concept and I brought it into my coaching conversation. So when I started working with leadership, I was thinking, okay, so we talked a lot about, for instance, our technology or our workflows. Let's talk about our customers. Do we have a good understanding of our customers? Okay, what about the culture of organization? What about the participants? And so it allowed us to more holistically look at the different aspects that are going on within the organization. It worked really well in one-on-one coaching, and then I brought it to the teams, to leadership teams. And when I facilitated leadership team exercises, I started to make sure that, hey, we talked about culture. Let's focus over here. Let's focus here. And what happened was really interesting is that instead of focusing on individual titles or departments, I got the team, the leadership team, to start behaving as a team and thinking together about the entire organization. So with that, once I started seeing the effect of this and the impact this had on leadership teams, I was thinking, hey, I think I've got something that can be useful for leadership teams. I met about 6-7 months ago a woman named Sally Alata that many of you might have heard of, and she is the founder of Agility Health. And when I was sharing with her some of the results of what I was doing, she said, something, we have this concept called a health radar that we use for teams to help them look at how they're doing in different aspects. You might want to use that for your LC5. And so she offered me to port that over, and I ported that over, and I created this Agility Health Radar that uses that LC5. And so what we do is a pair of professional facilitators, myself and another Agile coach that I've worked with for many years, we guided leadership teams in assessing their organization from these 5 different aspects. And then they would select what are the areas that they're strong in, and what are some of the areas that they have challenges in. And based off of that, they would decide on what are the areas that they need to work on to create an organizational growth plan. And so take a look at a few different examples. I'm going to take a few, and this helps us escort the elephants out of the organization, but let me take a look at a few different examples of how we've implemented it. So here, I wanted to take a few quotes from founders of organizations that I've worked with using this LC5. What we did is we did a half-day workshop with a number of different founders and CEOs from organizations, and we took their teams with their leadership teams with them in the room through this exercise of examining their organization from those 5 different perspectives, and the areas, breaking that down to the areas, the sub areas in between. And so here's an example from the first one I'll take you through is Headliner. Headliner is a organization that matches venues with bands, and it helps coordinate them. And so the founder of that organization, his name is Hector Corral, and we just published this morning on LinkedIn and on the Leading Clearly website a case study of what we took them through, and it was outstanding. So launching what he said at the beginning, and this is a quote from Hector, the founder, at the beginning of our workshop. And the name of the workshop is Envision. The reason we call it Envision is that we're taking the leadership team through an exercise in envisioning what would be their best state of, for instance, looking at their targets, or best state of everybody aligned on their customer. And based off of their envisioning that best state, where do they think they are now on a scale from like 0 to 5? So 5, we really understand the customer. Everybody is aligned and we have the same view, versus 0, we have no idea who we're serving. And so this opening the exercise, we had Hector say, launching a fully remote startup team has its challenges. A big one is we don't get the in-person team building experience that most are accustomed to. But that's not to say we can't find new creative ways to build organizational alignment. And that's why we're here. Another organization we worked with is Lisette Marie Interior Design. It's a very high-end interior design firm, large firm here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And as they were expanding, they knew that they would encounter new challenges, all of which required a united front in clearly defining the leadership roles as a team. Now, with that, I'll take you through, wrong way. Here we go. Now, with that, I'll take you through the last place here, and then I'll open us up for questions. Is that what do we do in this Envision workshop? So we have a half day where we bring the team together, we explore all that's going, and then we look at where are there opportunities. And so here's a quote from Hector at the end of the workshop. It was pretty telling with each category when there were crickets and nobody's willing to jump in and be the first to speak on certain topics. And the topics the team found comfortable and uncomfortable really surprised me. So here we've got the founder listening to his leadership team, understanding when his message resonated and when the team was quiet. There were crickets. Nobody was saying anything. And so there's some work that needs to be done in that area. And Beth, who is the chief of staff, she was talking about Envision allowed us to take what we always talked about, get it in writing and circulate it among the company. As a startup, we're constantly pivoting, testing, trying new things, and shifting gears. So it's easy to lose sight of where we're headed. Every time we explore a new segment or pivot, we need to ask, how does this align with the vision and values of the company? And actually, this company, what they landed on is they needed to clarify their values. In order to be able to expand and scale, they needed to get a better sense and write down what are their values so that when they hire new people and they scale, that they will embody the same values that those founders put into place. The Envision experience with Lisette Marie Interior Design, they landed on strategy. They had very different aspects. Different leaders had different understandings of what their strategy was. So the next day after they completed their Envision workshop, they decided to focus on their strategy. So with that, we just published our first case study this morning, and that's you can see it on LinkedIn and also on the website. And I wanted to open that up now and have some questions and some feedback on what you're observing and leadership teams over in Europe and in your area. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll open it up now for Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you, Natalie. That's amazing. Really, really good. I love all the artwork with the elephants. So we've got quite a few questions coming.
Let's do it.
So So from John, and if anyone wants to just chip in with their question, then please do. John's asked about, is naming it Agile transformation part of the issue in the first place? Because it sounds like,
yeah, right.
Get to the end.
That's a really good point. I mean, I've thought that myself too. Is like, transformation seems like you transform and you're done. Right? And I've heard so many leaders say, we spent X amount of dollars on our transformation. Why, what happened? Did we transform yet? Right? And that's a very weird mindset because, right? We're never really done changing.
Now, Holly, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, I can do. It's quite long, isn't it? So I'll give a bit of context. So I'm definitely not an experienced Agile coach, like I think probably a lot of people on the call are. My background is that I am a work stream lead, which is a bit like a Scrum Master, but not really. So context is the company that I work for embarked on their Agile transformation, I think 2 years ago, and we adopted SAFe, which I know has raised a few eyebrows. So I think it's probably only in the last 6 months that I've really started becoming passionate and interested in. That's probably not an Agile mindset. What is actually an Agile mindset? So that's why I'm here. But one of the things that I can't really get my head around is budgeting. So we work for a FTSE 250 company, and we have, shareholders, etc. So once a year we have to communicate what our expected returns are going to be to the market, and that's built on, we're going to do this by this point, this by this point. So I just can't figure out how, and that's the Agile anti-pattern the elephant track that you showed earlier about, don't care how you work as long as you deliver on time. That's exactly what we have. So I just can't seem to square budgets, doing what you say you're going to do, with the stability of, promising things to shareholders, the market, etc., with not delivering things on time. I just can't get my head around it. So any advice would be much welcome.
I'm going to start it, and I'm sure that all of us are smarter than any one of us. I'm sure that other people can chime in. So I'll just start us off with a response to that. So one, I'm not coming out against SAFe. I think SAFe's got some great concepts, right? And you take what you like, leave the rest. There's parts that are going to work for your organization and parts that aren't. It's got to forward you towards the objective of your organization. Regarding budgeting, let's say I've got $1 million and I start working towards this project. If I deliver the first increment of it early and I see that it's not tracking the value that I initially anticipated, then what I want to do is I need to pivot. I need to look at that, what happened, look at what I originally projected, and then decide, do I continue down that venue or do I learn from that experience and then pivot in a different direction? Because, what we want to promise our shareholders is around revenue and profit, not around stuff, because the stuff may or may not generate the revenue that you originally anticipated. Anyone else want to chime in around that? I think that's a really interesting topic and one that's very relevant.
Everybody's shy. Okay. So from my point of view, absolutely. Yeah, it's about experimentation, making sure that you are able to control your environment, deliver the best thing that you can. In fact, you may deliver something that's better through experimentation and actually doing that. And of course, there are always those constraints on any project. There are 3, but I can never remember all 3. Obviously, you're feature-based, so you can constrain that, so you can bring that in a bit, possibly. You're financially constrained or you're resource constrained. Those are the same things. That's why I always mess up on this. And it's like, well, you can bring extra people in to help with this, but then you spend more money. You can deliver late, but you don't fulfill your obligations, so therefore your budgets are slashed for next year or whatever. Or you can restrict what features you deliver to the market, but deliver on time. That one's probably the better one. you deliver on time, you consistently deliver things out to the market, and you learn from each and every single implementation you do on how to improve that customer journey, how to improve delivery. That would be my take on it.
If I could maybe just chime in, that's more like a symptom I often find. The problem is that the organization hasn't figured out what the problem is they're trying to solve. And so, let's do this agile thing. We'll get stuff out quicker, but we also want certainty, and this is the budget. So you can't do that. So for me, it's the analogy I use. I come to your house and I watch you make a cup of tea, and then I start suggesting how you should improve that process. But it's not understanding the value you get out of making tea. For me, it's just about getting a hot beverage. For you, it's an opportunity to relax and gather your thoughts, which I don't understand. So missing the problem and then just applying practices, you're going to bump heads all the time. And it's like I've been doing this for 14 years, and I probably say 1% of the organizations I've worked with have come close to actually defining the problem. Everybody knows what the answer is. The answer is agile, but we all forgot to ask what the question was. Anyway.
I love that. Yep. Yeah,
which is why Jeopardy is the best game show. You're given the answer, and then you have to try and figure out what the question is. But also to follow on from what Dylan said, there is obviously you're constrained by your budget. If you deliver things to the organization, they'll see that you can deliver these things, so they might give you a little bit more budget. And that potentially is something you could look at.
Yeah. A question from Anne. Are we discussing management 2.0 versus management 3.0 biases?
Oh, I love that question. That's so, what is his name from, who came up with, I have his book right over here that came up with management 2.0. It's a lovely concept, and it's interesting. In the US, it didn't hit as well as I think in Europe. It got more adapted. Mm-hmm. I think it's a cultural aspect. I align very much with what they're saying, and I think that those concepts very much are match each other and coordinate. Is another perspective. And really what I wanted to introduce is like there's exercises you can do with leadership teams to get them to start working on collaborating and getting them away from this kind of each person reports on its own thing, they're focused, they've got the blinders on, and they're only doing their outputs, to start teaming, right? We did teaming for technical delivery teams 20 years ago. We figured it out that was important. We really have to figure out the importance of doing that for our management teams also.
Yeah. Right now, I am consulting to a company where all the IT leaders, team leaders and up, went through Certified Agile Leadership, the CAL essence and organization. And so what I've had trying to do is talk in terms of what you were doing in a management 2.0 stance versus coaching in management 3.0, and referring them to folks like Jürgen Appello and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, Jürgen Appello, that's exactly the name that I was looking for. Yeah.
Okay. But what I was looking at when I saw the invite come over for this meetup was looking at, okay, here's some different ways to express what the goals and the objectives are, some different ways for them to look at it. Because after a while, I'm sure everybody in the room has figured this out. You can say something once, you need to say it at a different time, a different time, a different time. But after a while, it's like, okay, I need some new blood. I need some new ways of helping to phrase some of the different anti-patterns that you see in different leaders and how they look at their peers, or not as peers, but as competitors.
So let me just respond. So what I would advise here is look for something common for the team to focus on. A technical delivery team, the common piece is their product backlog. They're all working together on that product backlog, and you can get them to swarm on it. As a leadership team, what is the common items that they can work on together, that they can swarm on, that they can collaborate on to help build those muscles?
Good idea. Great idea. So can I have a follow-up question, David, before moving on?
Yes, please
Oh,
do.
thank you, sir. So when you talk about the LC5, could you elaborate on why those 5?
Yeah, so those 5 areas, when I went to Stanford University, I was looking for these, I realized there's universal components that make up every organization. And so those 5, if you look from those 5 different perspectives, you're going to get a holistic view of your organization. And so it gets you away from what happens with most of us is that we're blindsided. We might be focused, a lot of organizations are focused very much on workflows, right? They want to get their workflows right, and that for them is enough. But what about the culture, right? What about their targets? You know, if the workflows are working great, but if you're not going in the right direction, that's not going to really help you enough. And so by looking for those 5 different perspectives, you get out of just looking through one area, and you get a more holistic understanding of your organization.
Okay, Dylan, you've got your hand up. I'm not sure if you...
Yeah, just a quick question, really. Answer's probably not quick, though. I've experienced that quite a bit, especially with like sort of middle management, where the values are turned back on you. Like I should be allowed to come to that retrospective because it's all about openness. And in the heat of the moment, I often don't have an answer. I'm just curious if, Nathalie, if you've had experience with that and how you've dealt with those sort of values being kind of twisted back.
Yeah. So from the Envision, our workshop series, we had that debate. Do we leave the CEO in the room when the leadership team discusses what area to focus on? And we decided that we decided that it's important to have them in the room, and it worked out wonderful, because what happened is that the CEO got to sit back and listen to what areas the team was strong in and what areas they weren't that strong in. And in the end, it's their responsibility to make sure that messaging comes through so that they understand what's going on. It's also, there's at the leadership team level, when something happens, when a crisis happens, they can't say, well, it's, this is not something, we don't want you in there. We don't want the CEO in the room to when we figure out how do we respond to a crisis. Yeah, the person, he or she has to be in the room, right? They have to be working on it together. And so if we don't create that transparency and collaboration at the leadership level, then of course it's going to drizzle down and be there for everyone else. So I'm not going to say that a manager needs to be in a retrospective from a technical delivery team or not. That is something you have to decide based off of looking at.
I mean, the question's maybe not specifically around retrospective. Sorry, it's just more about how if you do have a situation where they're trying to manipulate by using that example, being open and etc. against you. Have you come across that, and how have you dealt with it?
So maybe clarify a little bit more about who. So are you talking about leadership teams, or are you talking about leadership?
So leadership. Somebody from leadership is using that. I mean, you gave an example early on about the micromanaging. It's all about and how would you respond to that? I suppose is my question.
Yeah. So one of the beauties of teaming is that you start helping each other. So for instance, let's say I'm part of a leadership team, and I start micromanaging. Then if I'm part of that team, other people, I can observe how my other leaders are working, and maybe I'll pick up what are some good ways to work so I can correct it myself, and maybe someone will call me on it. But if it's just me and I've got my delivery team and I'm working towards my outputs and all of that, then I have the blinders on. I don't see what's happening elsewhere. And so when you're part of a team, you start encouraging each other. So let's say, I'll give you another example. Let's say, I'm sure if I use soccer, it'll be a better example over here, or football, is if somebody hogs the ball all the time, right? How do you correct that? Well, you've got your coach in there that's helping, but also the team members are going to call you on it. Right? But if you were just playing by yourself out alone in the fields, you'd be alone with the ball the whole time. And so teaming is really the aspect that needs to be encouraged.
Great answer. So there's one more question there from Tristan, which is in relation to the managers or leaders not collaborating. He's asking, is this because leaders are more comfortable in the verticals and because they've got a common language within that vertical?
Yeah. So it's the change to the way that we're working. If we think about old school production, how things were doing that, then it was very, you could manage in that way. You were managing very much, these are the people, they have to deliver this piece. It's very hierarchical. And, it's very strict rules, but in new ways of working where we need to ideate and changes are happening so frequently, then we have to change our mindset and how we work, because it's not those rigid ways of going all the way up the chain and all the way down and one person deciding, it's not going to work in our digital era.
Good point. I am really conscious of Nathalie's time, because Nathalie, for you, it's like 11:40 now. You've probably got
almost time for lunch.
So I'm. If we can draw the questions to a close now, fantastic. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. I loved the metaphors with the elephants, and the number of questions we had is obviously a great indicator that people have really enjoyed the talk. So thank you, Nathalie. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me your questions, and take a look at the case study if you want to see really how this works.
Fantastic.
So thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Nat.